Have you ever stood in a car park somewhere overseas, looked at a badge you half recognize, and realized you've never seen that shape in your life? There are market-specific cars, country-exclusive models that were built, sold, serviced, and scrapped inside one set of borders and basically never crossed them. Not limited editions, not homologation specials, just ordinary showroom metal that belonged to exactly one country, often because import restrictions or tariffs made it that way. Today we're counting down 7 of them, from a plastic-bodied Brazilian coupé that Volkswagen quietly pretended never happened, to a V12 limousine with lace curtains that money couldn't buy you unless you lived in Japan. Stick around, because number 2 was still being sold new 25 years after it was designed, and it failed a crash test so badly it made international news. Let's start at number 7, in South Africa, with the Volkswagen City Golf. When Volkswagen killed off the Mark I Golf in Germany in 1983 and moved everyone onto the boxier Mark II, the factory in Uitenhage in the Eastern Cape had a problem. They had the tooling, they had the workforce, and they had a market where a cheap, tough, simple hatchback sold like cold beer in January. So instead of retiring the Mark I, they repainted it. Literally. The City Golf launched in 1984 in 3 colors so loud they looked like a packet of sweets with matching stripes and mirrors, and it stayed on sale in that same basic shell until August 2009. 25 years, well over 300,000 built. By most accounts, engines started at a 1.3-liter and eventually worked up to a 1.8, with about 90 horsepower in the City Golf Sport. And along the way, South Africa got hot versions the rest of us only read about, like the CTI. The final run was called the City Mark I. 1,000 cars, all with the same rear suspension geometry Volkswagen had signed off in the mid-70s. If you grew up in Johannesburg, this was your first car, your mum's car, and the car your driving instructor used. If you grew up anywhere else, you've probably never sat in one. That's a car that outlived its own generation. Our next pick never had a generation at all. Number 6 is the Volkswagen SP2 from Brazil. In the early 70s, Brazil had import restrictions that made bringing in a foreign sports car about as practical as swimming there. Volkswagen do Brasil decided to build their own, and the design work was led in-house under Marcio Piancastelli and José Vicente Martins. What came out in 1972 looked like a scaled-down Italian exotic. Long bonnet, low roofline, wraparound rear glass, proportions that still stop people in the street. Then you started it. Underneath was Volkswagen's air-cooled flat 4, bored out to 1.7 liters, making a reported 75 horsepower. In a car weighing around 900 kilos, that gave you a top speed somewhere near 160 kilometers per hour if the road was long enough and you were patient enough. Brazilian journalists at the time joked that SP stood for Sem Potência, without power. That nickname stuck so hard, it's now the first thing anyone says about the car. Volkswagen built roughly 10,200 of them between 1972 and 1976. And although a small number were exported to Nigeria and a handful of other markets, this was overwhelmingly a Brazilian-only car. Today, good ones change hands for serious money in São Paulo, because it turns out looking that good buys you a lot of forgiveness. Slow and gorgeous is one thing. Our next entry was slow, ugly, and utterly beloved. Number 5 is the Hindustan Ambassador. Here's the trick. The Ambassador wasn't really an Indian design at all. It was a case of badge engineering. The Morris Oxford Series 3, a British saloon from 1956, whose tooling was shipped out to the Hindustan Motors plant at Uttarpara in West Bengal. Classic platform sharing from one country to another across a decade. Production started in 1958 and continued. With facelifts you'd need a magnifying glass to spot until Hindustan suspended it in May 2014. 56 years of the same body. Early cars used a 1.5-liter petrol engine. Later ones got a 1.5 diesel that was famously reluctant but famously unkillable. The ride was soft, the steering was vague, and the boot was large enough to lose a suitcase in permanently. Government ministers rode in white ones with red beacons. Taxi drivers in Kolkata ran them for decades and rebuilt them with hand tools by the side of the road. The Ambassador survived because it fitted India's roads and India's mechanics, not because it was good. When Jeremy Clarkson's Top Gear team drove one, they were rude about it. And honestly, they weren't wrong. But there's a reason a 2013 Top Gear segment ended up calling it the best taxi in the world. Peugeot's parent company reportedly bought the Ambassador brand name in 2017 for around 80 crore rupees, roughly $12 million at the time. And so far, nothing has come of it. Our next pick sold nothing like those numbers, but it created a queue you had to win a lottery to join. Number 4 is the Nissan Figaro. In 1991, Nissan launched a car at the Tokyo Motor Show that looked like it had been designed in 1959 and left in a drawer. Round headlights, chrome bumpers, a fold-back roof, white face dials, and cream leather seats, and 4 colors named after the seasons: emerald green, pale aqua, lapis gray, and topaz mist. Underneath it was a Nissan Micra. The engine was a 987 cubic centimeter 4-cylinder, the MA10ET, turbocharged to around 76 horsepower, driving the front wheels through a 3-speed automatic. That's it. There was no manual. The Figaro was built by Nissan's Pike factory, a special projects division set up to produce small-run, retro-themed cars that wouldn't have survived a normal product committee. It's the same outfit that gave Japan the S-Cargo van and the POW. The Pike factory built exactly 20,073 Figaros, all for Japan, and demand was so far beyond supply that buyers had to enter a ballot. According to Nissan, well over 100,000 people applied. If your name didn't come out, you didn't get one, no matter how much money you waved. The Figaro was never officially sold anywhere else, which is why the thousands now driving around Britain and Ireland all arrived as grey imports, JDM cars, Japanese domestic market vehicles, brought over once Japan's 25-year and the UK's 10-year rules allowed. Drive one, and you'll find the performance is roughly that of a determined milk float. Nobody cares. It's the automotive equivalent of a cream tea. That was Japan being playful. Our next pick was Japan being deadly serious. Number 3 is the Toyota Century. Launched in 1967 and named for the 100th anniversary of Sakichi Toyota's birth, the Century is Toyota's answer to a Rolls-Royce, and it has never officially been sold outside Japan. A pure JDM institution. Not in America, not in Europe. If you see one here, somebody imported it. The second-generation car, the G50, arrived in 1997 with something no other Japanese production car has ever had, a 5.0-liter V12, the 1GZ-FE, quoted at 276 horsepower because of the industry's gentleman's agreement on power figures. It was built so that if one bank of cylinders failed, the car could reportedly limp home on the other 6. The badge on the nose is a phoenix, and Toyota says it was hand-engraved by a craftsman using a chisel, taking over a month per die. The paint process involved multiple hand-sanding stages. The rear doors have electric lace curtains, and the seats were traditionally wool, not leather, because leather squeaks against a suit, and Japanese executives found that undignified. The current third-generation car swapped the V12 for a 5.0 V8 hybrid, and Toyota still builds it at low volume for emperors, chairmen, and occasionally people you'd rather not owe money to. The imperial household uses a special version called the Century Royal. 4 were built. Our next entry couldn't be more different, unless you count the fact that both of them are national institutions. Number 2 is the Nissan Tsuru. The Tsuru is a Nissan Sentra. Specifically, it's the B13 Sentra, a car designed in the late 80s and sold in the United States from 1991. A textbook case of platform sharing across markets. When Nissan replaced it everywhere else, the Mexican plant in Aguascalientes just kept going and going. The Tsuru remained on sale, brand new, until May 2017. Think about what that means. In 2016, you could walk into a Mexican Nissan dealer and buy a car with no airbags, no anti-lock brakes, no stability control, and no side impact protection for around 105,000 pesos, roughly $5,500. It was the country's default taxi and the best-selling car in Mexico for years. Import tariffs and local pricing made anything more modern essentially out of reach for that market segment, which is exactly why it survived. Then, in 2016, Latin NCAP and the USIIHS ran a crash test that got very ugly very fast. They crashed a 2015 Nissan Tsuru into a 2016 Nissan Versa, front offset at 40 miles an hour. The Versa scored well. The Tsuru's cabin collapsed, and the testers concluded the dummy would have suffered fatal injuries. Latin NCAP had already given it 0 stars. According to their figures, the Tsuru was linked to over 4,000 deaths in Mexico between 2007 and 2012. Nissan announced production would end and built a final run of 1,000 cars, which brings us to number 1, and a car so specific to its home market that when the factory shut, an entire body style went extinct. Number 1 is the Holden Commodore Ute and its wildest version, the HSV Maloo. Australia invented this thing in 1934, when a farmer's wife in Victoria reportedly wrote to Ford asking for a vehicle she could take to church on Sunday and carry pigs in on Monday. A young designer called Lou Bant built it. 90 years later, Holden was still selling the idea, and by the end, it had gone completely mad. The VF generation HSV Maloo R8 LSA, launched in 2015, had a supercharged 6.2-liter LSA V8 producing 400 kilowatts, which is about 536 horsepower, sent to the rear wheels through a 6-speed manual if you wanted one. It had a tray in the back and a torque vectoring system in the diff. In 2006, a previous Maloo, driven by Mark Scaife, set a Guinness World Records title for the fastest production pickup at 271.44 kilometers per hour. Officially recognized, properly documented, not just a claim on a brochure. None of this was sold in Europe. A small number went to the Middle East and South Africa, and America got the Commodore sedan, briefly as the Pontiac G8 and Chevrolet SS, both riding the same GM Zeta platform underneath, but the Ute stayed home. Holden's Elizabeth plant in South Australia closed on the 20th of October 2017, the last car down the line being a red VF Commodore. The Ford Falcon Ute had already ended a year earlier. 2-seat V8 rear-drive pickups with sports car suspension simply stopped existing. So there you go. 7 country-exclusive cars that lived and died inside one border, shaped by import restrictions, local economies, and occasionally pure national stubbornness, from a Mark I Golf that refused to retire in South Africa to a supercharged Australian farm truck that could outdrag most Porsches of its day. Now I want to hear from you. What story about cars do you want me to cover next? Drop it in the comments, because I read all of them and half my video ideas come from you lot. And if you enjoyed this one, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.